Welcome to Kindness Stories, the channel where true emotions, unexpected encounters, and the power of compassion come alive. Today's story is one that begins on a quiet night, when a knock at the door changed everything. She knocked on his door at midnight, wearing nothing but a tearful smile. What happened next is a journey of pain, compassion, and redemption. It was a cold and silent night. The streets outside were deserted, the lamps flickering weakly, and the air heavy with stillness. Inside his modest home, Daniel sat alone in his living room. The glow of the television filled the otherwise dark room, but his mind was far away. He had been lost in thought, replaying memories of a life that felt too heavy for one man to carry. Since his wife had passed away 2 years ago, Daniel had grown used to silence, to nights where loneliness sat beside him like an unwanted guest. Just as the clock struck midnight, he heard it. A faint knock on the door. At first, he thought he had imagined it. Who could be visiting at this hour? Another knock followed, louder, desperate. Daniel hesitated, his heart beating faster. Slowly, he walked to the door, unlocked it, and pulled it open. Standing there was a young woman. Her hair was messy, her eyes swollen with tears, her hands trembling at her sides. She wore nothing but a torn dress and the faintest shadow of a smile that was more pain than joy. Her lips quivered, her body shook in the cold night air, but she tried to hold herself together. Daniel froze. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice filled with alarm. The woman lowered her eyes, tears spilling down her cheeks. I didn't know where else to go," she whispered. Daniel quickly moved aside. "Come in, please. You're freezing." She stepped inside hesitantly, her bare feet leaving faint marks on the wooden floor. Daniel fetched a blanket and wrapped it gently around her shoulders. She clutched it tightly, as though it was the only warmth she had felt in a long time. They sat in the living room, the silence broken only by the sound of her quiet sobs. Daniel didn't want to pressure her, but his concern grew. "What happened?" he asked softly. Her name, she told him, was Emily. Her story came out in fragments, each piece like a wound torn open. She had been in an abusive relationship for years. At first, she had believed it was love, but love does not leave bruises on the skin or scars on the heart. That night, after yet another argument turned violent, she had run. She had no shoes, no coat, no plan, just the desperate need to escape. Her feet carried her through the dark streets until she found herself in front of Daniel's house. "Something," she said, told her to knock. Daniel listened, his chest heavy with sorrow. He saw the pain in her eyes, the exhaustion in her face, and the quiet plea for safety that hung in her trembling smile. He thought of his late wife, how she too had carried struggles hidden behind gentle smiles. Compassion swelled inside him. "You're safe now," he told her firmly. "No one is going to hurt you here." Emily's tears flowed freely. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of relief. She wasn't alone anymore. Daniel offered her food, though she barely touched it. He gave her a room, a warm bed, and the assurance that she could rest without fear. That night, Emily cried herself to sleep under the safety of a stranger's roof, a roof that did not echo with violence. The days that followed were fragile but transformative. Emily woke up each morning surprised to find peace instead of anger, silence instead of shouting. She began to share more of her story with Daniel. She spoke of dreams she once had, dreams of becoming a teacher, of living in a small house filled with laughter. Those dreams had been buried under years of control and cruelty, but speaking them aloud made them flicker back to life. Daniel encouraged her gently. He reminded her that she was more than her scars, more than her suffering. He helped her believe that she could rebuild her life. Slowly, Emily began to heal. She found her voice again. She began to smile. Not the tearful smile she had worn that night, but a genuine one, fragile yet hopeful. Sometimes healing is not grand or sudden. Sometimes it is as simple as a cup of tea shared at a quiet kitchen table, as simple as a kind word at the right time. Daniel knew this. He did not try to rush her. He only gave her what she needed most: patience, kindness, and safety. Weeks turned into months. Emily found the strength to report her abuser and to seek help from organizations that protected women like her. Daniel stood by her side through every step, not as a savior, but as a friend who believed in her strength. Eventually, Emily enrolled in courses to pursue her dream of teaching. For the first time in years, she looked forward to the future instead of fearing it. The broken woman who had knocked on his door that midnight was slowly becoming whole again. One evening, months later, Emily sat with Daniel in the living room. The television flickered softly in the background. She turned to him, her eyes shining with gratitude. If you hadn't opened that door, I don't know where I would be, she said quietly. Daniel smiled gently. Sometimes, all someone needs is for a door to be opened. You had the courage to knock. That was the hardest part. Tears filled her eyes, but this time they were tears of hope, not despair. She reached over and squeezed his hand. Thank you for reminding me that kindness still exists. Daniel looked at her, and for the first time in a long while, he felt his own loneliness lift. Helping Emily had reminded him that even in loss, life could offer new purpose. The night she had knocked on his door had changed both of their lives. For Emily, it was the night she escaped the chains of her past and found a new beginning. For Daniel, it was the night he discovered that even in the deepest silence of grief, compassion could bring light back into his world. Her tearful smile that night had been a cry for help, but today her smile was different. It was a smile of survival, of strength, of hope. This story is not just about two people meeting by chance. It is about the doors we all carry, the doors of kindness, compassion, and humanity. Sometimes, opening those doors can save a life. So remember this: when someone knocks, whether literally or through their actions, be willing to open your heart. Because you never know whose life might change, and how your own might change in return. This was today's story from Kindness Stories, a place where we share moments that remind us of the power of compassion. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe, share, and spread the message. In a world where we can be anything, let us always choose to be kind.